people today. They could spend half their lives over 50. That's a lot of living. So it helps to have a wise friend and fierce defender in your corner. A friend like AARP. So your health lives longer.
This is just slow-mo karate?
Just slow-mo karate.
Your money lives longer.
I just bought that.
I just sold that.
And your happiness lives longer. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Join today.
Welcome to AARP Illinois' virtual event. It's so wonderful to have you with us. AARP is on a mission to connect with individuals across various communities, especially those aged 50 and above. We're here to listen, understand, and address the unique needs of you and your community as we age. Our goal is to enrich your experience by expanding our local activities, providing opportunities for you to discover and engage with all that life has to offer right here in your own community and virtually. As we journey through today's event, we invite you to consider joining our dedicated team of AARP volunteers. It's a chance to make a meaningful impact and help us better serve those 50 plus across the nation. Connect with us and be a part of this vibrant movement toward positive change. Welcome, and let's make this event both fun and transformative.
Hey there, AARP world. My name is Chef Holly Rutherford. I'm coming to you today from Morton, Illinois. Today we are working on a couple of great, fantastic sheet pan dinners. I don't know about you, but I hate doing dishes, so the less the better. And with these ones, you can do a whole meal on a sheet pan. So the first one we've got up today, I call it Sausage and Potato Bake. It couldn't be simpler. So we're gonna start out, we have a great big bowl here. I always like to start out with putting my oil and seasonings in the bottom. I find it easier to get it evenly coating stuff that way. I am just eyeballing this, but you're gonna need about a quarter of a cup. And then I'm just gonna season this up, some salt and pepper. We are putting smoked sausage in this, so I always start conservatively on the salt because that sausage is salty. And then I've got some black pepper here. And then I have some Italian seasoning. This adds a lot of nice flavor. Doesn't add any of your sodium, calories, anything like that. So I'm gonna do a big tablespoon of that to give this lots of flavor. And then I'm just gonna give that just a little bit of a mix. And that's good. Okay, so what all is going in this dish? I've got some smoked sausage. I like the turkey kind. It is a little bit lower in fat and cholesterol for you. I've got a couple of sweet potatoes. I've got some yellow potatoes. I like yellow. If you like russet or red ones, feel free to use whatever you like. I have got one onion and I have got some Brussels sprouts. So I am going to go ahead and start with my sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes have such fantastic nutrients in them. They're full of beta carotene, which is good for your eyes. They also have a lot of fiber, which is good for your blood pressure and your digestion. I always peel my sweet potatoes because they have a very tough skin, and it's just not something that I like to bite into. You'll see with my yellow potatoes, though, I just leave them on. There's a lot of good nutrients and fiber in that skin. So I try to leave it intact wherever I can. Sweet potatoes is just a little too leathery for me. So I'm just giving these a quick peel. I've got a couple of medium-ish sized sweet potatoes here. If you don't care for sweet potatoes, carrots also work really well in this dish. My husband doesn't like sweet potatoes, but he'll eat the carrots. You could just do the baby carrots, then you don't really have to do anything to them. Or if you have regular traditional carrots, just give them a little bit of a peel and chop them into some nice big chunks. We're going to be roasting this, so we don't want to go too small, otherwise that tends to burn. All right, there's one potato. Do my other one real quick here. This is one of my favorite go-tos on like a weeknight or something when I'm just tired. I don't want to stand at the stove to make dinner, but it's nice and filling, has vegetables in it. And then we're also going to make a little sauce to go with it, with some sour cream and some mustard. That tanginess goes really well with the richness of this dish. With a little bit of fattiness and saltiness from the sausage and the heartiness of the vegetables. It works great. You could also just make yourself a little salad to go with this if you want like a little bit more vegetables in it. Like I said, it's already got a bunch in it. Right now I have my oven preheating to 375 degrees. When I am roasting things, I like to go to a little bit higher temperature just to make sure that we're getting some nice color on those items. Now these, because like the sweet potatoes take a little while to cook and I don't want them to burn, I'm doing them at 375. But you'll see our next dish, I'm gonna turn that heat up. Okay, so I am just trying to get these into nice big chunks. I'm just gonna split that in half a little bit just to make it a little bit easier to work with. And like I said, just some decent sized chunks, like so. Those are probably almost an inch. And they're just gonna go right into our great big bowl there. I do try to get stuff at least close in size so that it cooks evenly. Obviously, with such irregular shapes, it's not going to be perfect. That's okay. I like the Italian seasoning. I find that it's not too much for most people. Some seasonings are just a little intense. The Italian seasoning has a lot of flavor without being overwhelming. Next, I'm going to do my yellow potatoes. I'm not peeling these, just give them a little bit of a wash. And again, just going for some nice sized chunks. These are a little small, so I'm doing about 3. You're aiming for about a pound. Next, I'm going to do my Brussels sprouts. I have a pound here. I'm only going to do about half. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to trim the stem off. That is really woody. We don't want to eat that. And then these are just going to get cut in half and go into our great big bowl. Brussels sprouts are definitely something I hated as a kid, but as an adult, I really enjoy them, especially roasted. They start to get a little bit brown and they get that little bit of caramelization on them, and it just adds such fantastic flavor. It brings out that sweetness of the Brussels sprouts. It's so good. Next, I'm going to do my onion. Here again, I just kind of want some nice thick slices. So how I am going to do this, I'm going to first start by cutting off the stem end. I'm going to leave the root intact for now. It helps hold everything together. But I am going to cut it in half through the root. This is going to make your onion really easy to peel. Okay. I find that if I cut the root end off too before I get them peeled, I end up losing layers. But now I am going to cut off the root end. And then how I'm going to do this, I got my nice 2 little half circles here. Instead of cutting this way and getting some like really big pieces and some really tiny pieces, I'm going to cut the opposite way. This gives us a little bit more even pieces. I'm going to cut these about 1/4 of an inch wide. About the width of my finger, I guess. And those into the big bowl. All right, last thing here, I have some smoked sausage. Like I said, this one is a turkey one. I like the turkey ones. You could do a traditional pork one, a beef one, whatever you like. They make some that are really spicy, if you like spicy. I'm going to just cut this in half to make it a little easier to work with. And then from here, for this one, I just cut in slices. If you have somebody that has issues with chewing or swallowing, you could also cut this in half moons. To do that, you just cut it lengthwise and then cut it into slices. Today, I'm just going to cut slices. All right, so there's all that. This is why you want to make sure you have a nice big bowl. There's a lot going on in there. And now we got everything in there. I'm just going to use my rubber spatula to just give everything a bit of a mix. I'm going to make sure I get down to the bottom of that bowl so that I'm bringing that oil and those seasonings up. I'm getting everything nice and coated. Got some pretty colors. Got that reddish brown of the sausage, the orange of the sweet potatoes, that green from the Brussels sprouts. That onion's going to add a lot of nice flavor. Onion gets nice and sweet when you roast it. It's so good. Okay, so we just want to make sure everything is nice and coated. That looks good. And then here I just have a baking sheet with parchment on it. And it's just all going on there. You'll see I really don't have any oil or anything left in my bowl. We don't want it swimming in oil, just enough to coat. That is going to help everything brown and get some nice caramelization on it. Okay, that looks good. Just trying to spread it out as evenly as we can. So this is going to go in the oven, and then we're going to put our little sauce together, and then we're going to move on to our next recipe. Okay, for our sauce, I've got about a cup of sour cream here. You could also just use plain Greek yogurt if you like. A lot of things I do. I just felt like using sour cream today. Get that in my bowl. And I have some spicy brown mustard here, like a stone ground mustard. That tanginess goes so well with that sausage and the roasted vegetables. I'm going to do a tablespoon of this. And then I have some garlic powder. Just to add another nice little layer of flavor. And I'm going to do a teaspoon of that. And then we're just going to do a little bit of salt and pepper here. I always start small with salt. You can add more in. Getting it back out's tricky. Okay, just give this a little bit of whisk. smells so good. Let's just see. That is delicious. I do think I am going to add a little bit more mustard though, just to help that come through a little bit more. Just going to eyeball that. Another tablespoon. Different mustards have different strengths and whatnot, so sometimes you just gotta adjust. There we go, perfect. That mustardy tang comes through really well. Okay, so I'm gonna get this in the refrigerator to just hang out until our sausage and potato bake is done, and we are going to move on to our next recipe. Our next dish is going to be a new twist on fish and chips, but we are doing it in the oven. We are going to do some crispy oven cod with some garlic parmesan green bean fries. So we're going to start out by setting up our battering station. I've got about a half pound of fresh green beans here. I've just gone through and made sure that they didn't have any stems on them or anything like that. So that is going to be at the beginning of my line here. Next, I just have some all-purpose flour. Today, we are doing gluten-free. This recipe is super easy to do gluten-free. I just have an all-purpose gluten-free flour here. Rice flour would also work well for this. I like rice flour for frying and battering because it's really light. So I'm just seasoning up that flour a little bit. I got some salt and pepper. And then I'm going to do some garlic powder. Do about a teaspoon. And just mix that up a little bit with my hand. That's my first bowl. My second bowl, I have one large egg. I crack into there. And I'm just going to put a splash of water in here. Just give that a nice good whisk. We just want to try and get it as smooth as we can. Okay, that's pretty good. And then my last bowl, I have some gluten-free panko breadcrumbs and a little bit of grated Parmesan cheese. This is going to add some really good flavor to our green bean fries. And the panko makes them nice and crispy. To this, I'm going to add just a little bit of melted butter. This is just going to help the panko brown up in the oven. Don't want to go too crazy with it because then it just gets kind of soggy, which is not what we want. So just enough butter just to kind of coat things. So see, it just kind of starts looking like wet sand kind of. And if you feel it, it's just slightly sticky, okay? That was about 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Now, the process here. I always like to wear gloves because it's very messy. And I find that changing gloves makes things go a little faster. You can get single-use gloves at any of your big discount stores, grocery stores, things like that. Pretty much everybody carries them these days. Okay, so I'm going to start off with just a few of my green beans. Give them a little bit of a toss in my seasoned flour. A little bit of shake, so I'm not putting some big old clumps of flour in my egg. And toss them in there. Now when I am battering, I always have a dry hand and a wet hand. This helps prevent some of the gooey mitt problems. So now with my other hand, I'm going to toss in the egg. Let those just drip off a little bit. And then into the panko. And back to my other hand to make sure these are nice and coated. Okay, now my pan here, I just have a rimmed baking sheet. I put a piece of parchment down. It just makes cleanup easier. And then I have a cooling rack set on top. What that's going to do is it's going to allow better air circulation and help our stuff get crispier. So I am just going to spread these out on here. Do a few more. Next, I have a couple of nice pieces of cod. And then kind of the same setup, okay? This is my gluten-free all-purpose flour. But here, instead of egg, I'm using buttermilk. Just need a little bit of a mixy mix. And then I have my gluten-free panko. Now to season this, we are busting out an old favorite when it comes to seafood, Old Bay seasoning. I dare you to think of seafood and not think of Old Bay. So what we are going to do, we're going to season every step of this with this Old Bay. So we are going to do a half a teaspoon in the flour, half a teaspoon in the buttermilk, half a teaspoon in the pink. A little bit of mixy mix right before we go. In our buttermilk. Old Bay, of course, kind of keeps the secret of what exactly is in it, but it does have a lot of yummy things like celery seed, bay leaves, paprika. I believe there's some ground mustard in there. Okay, and then just like before, we're going to do a little bit of melted butter on our gluten-free panko, just to help it brown. You can see that Old Bay turns just like a little bit orange, but that's going to give it some good flavor. That looks good. Now I'm going to get another pair of gloves. Now I am using cod today, but you can use any firm white fish. Mahi would work well here, as would something like halibut. I just wouldn't go with something more fragile, such as tilapia. It is more likely to fall apart on you during this process. So I've just gotten a couple of nice pieces of cod fillet here, and it's going to go first in the flour. Make sure to get those little ends. And then the buttermilk. Then the panko. And with this, I always just try to make sure I kind of press that panko on there. And that is going to help it stick and make that nice crunchy crust that we want. And that is also going to go on our pan. Now the other piece. Flour. Give a nice little pat down. Shake into the buttermilk. And into the pink. Good press. All right, here we go. That is ready to go in the oven. So we're gonna get that in there, and then I'm gonna show you how to make a really delicious, herby, homemade tartar sauce. All right, so next we are gonna make a nice, fresh, herby tartar sauce to go with our oven fried fish and chips. I'm gonna start off here. I've got about a cup of Greek yogurt and then just a couple of tablespoons of mayo. This just helps add a little bit of richness to it. Just gonna give that a little bit of a mix. Next, I am going to zest and juice 1 lemon. I have my nice little microplane here. Very, very handy in the kitchen. I definitely suggest you get one. And we just want to make sure that we are only getting the yellow part. We don't want to get the white part that is underneath. That is called the pith, and that is very bitter. We don't want that in our sauce. So we just gently rub it on there. Rotate. Do the next little bit. I love some fresh lemon with seafood. It's so good. All right. We got that pretty well zested into our sauce there. Now I'm just going to cut it in half. Give it a juice here. If I can get it to fit. There we go. Now, if you feel like your lemons are a little bit dry, like you're going to have trouble juicing them, some people will just give them a good roll on your countertop. You can also stick them in the microwave. Just only do it for about 10 or 15 seconds. You don't want to blow up a lemon in your microwave. All right, so we got our lemony goodness in there. That also helps thin that out just a little bit, which is the texture that we want for our fish. Now we're going to start adding in some fresh herbs. Today I've got a little bit of fresh dill, some curly parsley, and some fresh chives. And then after we get those in, I have some fresh cornichons that we are going to chop up and put in there, as opposed to the traditional sweet pickle relish. I feel like chopping these guys up gives a little bit better texture, and I also just like the flavor better. So cornichons are just itty bitty tiny baby sweet pickles. Could also just use regular sweet pickles. If you really want it, you could also just use the sweet relish, but I'm going to do the little tiny baby cornichons. All right, I am going to start off with my chives here. These are going to add a good little mild oniony taste. And I'm just going to dice these small. Good for more than just baked potatoes. Okay, that's probably a couple tablespoons there. Into our mix. Next, I have the dill. With this, I am just going to try and get it off these woody stems. We don't want those in our tartar sauce. So I just pluck them off. You get a little bit in there, it's not that big a deal. You really want to avoid like these stems because that is just going to be rough. All right, I got those plucked off. We're going to give this a good chop. I try to get these pretty fine for this tartar sauce so that we have a nice texture. It also helps distribute the herbs evenly when they're nice and fine. Dill is very strong, so I always start small on dill. I'm not going to do as much of it as I do the other herbs. Okay. That one is probably a couple teaspoons. And then my fresh parsley here, I'm gonna kind of do like I did with the dill and just kind of pluck some of the leaves off. Parsley stems are more tender, so if you get a little bit in your sauce, it's not that big a deal. Again, you just want to avoid the big ones. Some fresh tarragon would also be really good in here. I just struck out at the grocery store on that one, couldn't find any. And come summertime, my mom grows it. And her tarragon plants are almost as tall as I am. They're huge. All right, in that goes. All right, give that just a little bit of mix. You see it's quite green with all of those herbs. Next we're gonna do our cornichons. And I am gonna just give these a good chop. And from here, I'm gonna mix. I like the flavor of sweet pickle relish. I'm just not a fan of the texture. So a lot of times when recipes call for sweet pickle relish, you know, your tuna salads and deviled eggs and that sort of thing, I just chop up my either these little cornichons, or like I said, you can also just use a regular little sweet pickle. All right, got a little bit more here than I need. I'm gonna probably use about half this. That mix in there. And of course we got a salt and pepper. Don't go super crazy with the pepper on this one. I want those other flavors to come through. All right, get that good and mixed in there. Let's give it a taste, see if we need to adjust anything. It's got a lot of really good flavor. I am going to add a little bit more of the cornichon, a little bit more salt, and I think it'll be right where I want it. Perfect. The nice lemoniness in there, all those fresh herbs, that little bit of sweetness from the cornichon. So now this is gonna go into the refrigerator until our fish is done. All right, so our sausage and potato bake has been in the oven about 40 minutes now. Our fish and our green bean fries have been in there about 20. So we are gonna pull them out and see how they look. Ooh, there's our sausage and potato bake. That looks fantastic. Look at the sausages are starting to brown. The Brussels sprouts are getting some of that caramelization. And there's our fish and green bean chips. Get nice and brown and crispy. Get some of these on a plate. This one from a sausage and potato bake. Some of those gonna be Brussels sprouts in there. Of course, we need that mustard sauce to go with this one. Then over here, we've got our crispy oven baked cod, gluten-free. with our green bean fries and our yummy herb tartar sauce. Both of those each on one sheet pan. I hope you enjoyed the recipes today. I am Chef Holly Rutherford, again coming to you from Morton, Illinois, and we'll see you next time at AARP.